Divinely Mandated King of the Hill Part 1. Albedo. Walking down the hallway of the treasury, I found myself smiling as I considered the report that I had been given by one of my spies. Last night, the whore seemed to undergo some form of transformation, one that was horrifically agonizing to her. I only wish that I could have been there to hear it. Regardless, following her growth of another one of those ugly tales, a pillar of golden mana surrounding her shot into the sky, visible from Nazarik's sight. Following this, the whore seemed to enter some form of coma. It was after this occurred that more of her kind appeared and began to construct some form of temple around the area, with the whore having not been seen since. Considering that I have had my spies watching her home in Rantle, I already predicted that she was hidden inside that hastily constructed temple. Additionally, with the amount of kitsune that appeared soon afterwards, it was easy to tell that she was most likely still in that coma, or in a state where she would not be able to defend herself. The length of said weakness, I could assume to be a few days at the very least, simply due to the activity of her guards. On that note, there is also my love's immediate interest and concern with the source of that golden pillar of mana. He was hesitant to try and approach it, worrying that the whore might take issue due to it having occurred in the Re-Estai's kingdom, which she seemed to claim as her territory, and because of her still being absurdly upset with my love's rulership over Nazarik. It didn't help that when he attempted to contact her through message, the whore didn't respond. At first, he thought that it was because something happened to the whore, but I convinced him otherwise. As an emotional and illogical person, the whore was simply ignoring my love due to her continued anger at him. I helped to facilitate this lie so as to protect him from any further plots that she may attempt to enact on my love if they were to both interact with one another. Instead, I simply told him that I would send a few of my scouts to investigate the disturbance and report back on anything that was found. This lie to protect my love was only possible because Demiurge had taken his scouts off the bitch to follow Momonga's orders as best as he could, leaving the whore and her daughters alone. Sadly, Demiurge doesn't see that there are moments where we need to protect Momonga from even himself at times. This was one of those moments. And because I convinced Momonga to allow me to take care of the issue as Demiurge was busy with managing the conquest of the Wyvern Rider tribes and the false flag attack on the capital of Re-Estai's, I was allowed to handle this personally. As such, I was given free rein to utilize some of Nazarik's resources to accomplish this task. After all, since we had been unable to scry the location of this pillar due to it being blocked, we obviously needed to be cautious. This led to why I was in the treasury with quite a few requests in mind for Pandora's actor to fulfill. Reaching the end of the hallway to see Pandora's actor resting on one of the few couches in this room. Upon seeing me, he got up from where he was sitting and gave me a salute, greeting, Albedo. How might I, the ever-faithful guardian of Nazarik's treasury, be able to help you today? The doppelganger said with his usual enthusiasm. Hello, Pandora's actor. I am here on behalf of Lord Irons to perform a mission. Because of this, I will require a few items of note that I recall seeing in the inventory catalogue. Excellent, Mein Fräulein. Pandora's actor exclaimed with another salute. What shall you need to complete this mission for Mein Furor? I'll require 2 spider's harps, the ring of amnesia, a ring of dispel search, and multiple scrolls with the odorless spell. I listed off quickly, waiting to hear anything from the yellow-clad doppelganger. Certainly, Mein Fräulein. I can retrieve those items quickly enough. Pandora's actor agreed. Will you require anything else to aid you on this mission? No. Everything else about this mission can be handled on my own. I answered. With a flourish of the coat hanging from his shoulders, followed by an exaggerated bow, Pandora's actor walked off towards the treasury while I waited. All the while, I ran through my mind the plan I had been forming together. After much consideration of the restrictions imposed upon me, by both my love and the need to hide Nazarik's involvement, I had to get creative. As such, my plan worked on multiple different stages that all came together at different parts. Prior to this opportunity, I had already assembled the start of a secondary false flag operation after learning of how the whore has been claiming a false godhood that could only ever belong to my love. Since the slain theocracy is highly dogmatic of their ludicrous religion, I planned to frame them as the masterminds behind the assault. It was simple enough to do after capturing a few bandits and utilizing multiple methods of mind control on them. I forewent using control amnesia upon the humans due to not knowing the spell myself, nor did I want any member of Nazarick who did know the spell to know of my full plan. This mission I convinced my love to give me was the perfect excuse to take out the ring of amnesia from the treasury to fully rewrite the memories of these humans into subservience. From there, the clothing that Nazarick acquired after Momonga rightfully killed those members of the White Scripture would have a use in disguising these controlled humans as members of the Slane's operatives. The spider's harps were special summoning items that were consumed with each use. Upon their use, they would each summon an arachnoid commander, 2 Drider assassins, and 4 giant spiders. My human puppets would utilize these items and become the summoners of these creatures, giving another degree of separation from both myself and, especially, Nazarick. Once summoned, and all my operatives were in place for the right moment, they would strike. Considering how the whore was incapacitated, her mangy beasts would be more focused on protecting her than they would on her daughter. Part of the attack force would attempt to capture or kill the whore, drawing the beasts' attentions away from the girl, while the rest would go for their true objective of capturing her. Once subdued, the ring of dispel search would be put on her, preventing her from being found, while the scrolls with odorless would nullify any kind of scent tracking that might be performed by those mangy beasts. Following this, the easily identified slain theocracy members would escape south with the girl in tow, leading the whore's pets on a false trail, before utilizing a scroll of teleportation that I had given them prior from my own inventory to teleport to their original hideout where the girl would be in my grasp, yet not directly in Nazarick itself. From there, the whore would finally be brought to heel, and all the while, she'd think it was the slain theocracy pulling the strings. My love would finally be safe from the whore, and my nemesis would be brought low. And, in the interim, who knows? I might even toy with the brat as a cathartic release due to being unable to physically punish the whore in an obvious manner. I could be quite creative. I'll just need the correct moment for my minions to strike. Platinum Dragon Lord. I was immensely concerned at the golden pillar of pure mana that could be seen and felt from so far away. I was completely uncertain on who the power could have originated from. What I can assume, without hesitation, is that it came from a player. The real question was about which player it originated from. The Fox Princess was a possible answer, considering how close her location is, relatively speaking, to the pillar. But I couldn't fully assume that it was her. It could potentially be from another player like the vampire I fought. What a horrifying thought that was to consider. I'd have to go uncover the source of this immediately. Looking to my remote armor, I mentally commanded it to stand before gathering some wild magic to myself. I'll send my armor slightly outside the area of origin so that I had time to gather as much wild magic to myself as possible. If I must take part in another battle, I will need every advantage I can get. Depending on the outcome of this investigation, I think that I'll make contact with the Fox Princess again and see if I can persuade her to join my cause. After all, from my personal view of such beings, players were liable to be highly aggressive to one another if they didn't have some prior alliance. After her, I think that I will make contact with Rigrit and Evil Eye since, aside from myself, they have had the most experience in fighting other players. If I was extraordinarily lucky, this could be another one of the legendary weapons that the players left behind and some random soul had found. Were that to be the case, I would take it and store it here at my base. In my personal opinion, it was better for the ultimate weapons of players to be kept out of the hands of everyone, including my own kind, and locked away. Too much wanton destruction could be caused by those who lacked the understanding or respected the devastation that these weapons could bring about. With all hope, it would latter of these potential origins instead of the former. Evelyn. Chaos filled the Magicians Guild as my sisters and I began mobilizing an expedition team to head towards the location of the golden pillar conjured by Our Lady's mana. As her loyal followers, my sisters and I knew that Our Lady had enhanced the power of her own divinity greatly. In what way? We were uncertain, but we would embark on this pilgrimage to discover what it was and pay homage to her ascended glory. Though, there were other possible reasons to take this journey aside from honoring our goddess. Just as we were witness to the power and glory that our goddess emitted, so too was the rest of the city. Yet, they were not as attuned to the beautiful caressing power of the fox princess as we were. They didn't understand it as anything other than a massive power that needed to be investigated due to the potential danger to Rantel. The nobles, along with the city's mayor, were too hasty in their decision to send a platoon of soldiers to investigate before we could try and convince them otherwise. And even with the attempt, the nobles that were on the verge of believing in her loving and inviting power still held doubts that it could be something else. So, that spurred us to hasten our preparations to leave. And our group was not the only one in tow. There were the greedier folk of the city who believed that some sort of powerful item had appeared and wished to acquire that power for themselves or attempt to sell it. Such is the way of us mortals, disappointing though it may be. I pray to my goddess that she will be forgiving of the transgressions of these mortals that were blind to holy truth of the fox princess. And for such a momentous event, I would lead this expedition with Teresia and Mercia at my side along with much of the congregation of the guild following. We also desired to see our goddess, yet we readied ourselves for protecting our lady so that she needn't waste her energies on such issues. I only wish that all of her followers had been able to join us on our journey, yet that could not be the case. There had to be some to see the visitors of the guild, others to protect it, and then there were the maidens staying behind for their most important task yet. Our second future high priestess still had questions that only us maidens could answer. Gazing at the statue of my goddess, Casablanca, I had, along with all her maidens who had been gifted such holy sight, taken pleasing notice of the golden energies that had begun to congregate upon the replication of her holy form. Since yesterday after the ascension, we had discovered all of the golden motes, once simply coming off of her congregation and into whatever direction our goddess went, had now begun collection upon her objects of worship. As such, where once there was simple stone, now it was awash in this holy gold. And, as walking objects of worship to her divinity, even us maidens hadn't been exempt from such changes. Our bodies and ceremonial robes were covered in this energy, while the gold rings in our eyes had been steadily growing. For instance, I only had a quarter of the original blue in my eyes left, and it would likely be fully subsumed within the passing days or weeks. This was the same for all of the other maidens. I have no doubt that my goddess daughter, Nina, is likely further along the process if she isn't there already. Whereas some would be fearful of the change, I prayed for it to speed up so that I might sooner share the same beautiful gaze as my goddess. In time, perhaps they might fully change beyond just color to that of her slitted pupils. I sent her a prayer, my blessed goddess, please grant your followers safe passage as we come to witness your divine ascension. I give you thanks for the gifts given to us humble mortals. Praise be to the fox princess. As I ended my supplication, I found myself filled with a gentle warmth that told me the fox princess was listening. Thank you for hearing me. I finished before turning to leave the room with a smile as Lisa and Maya helped to dress our flustered and blushing future high priestess. While examining the girl, I thought about how perfect our two high priestesses would look when together in their ceremonial garb with the fox princess. I'm certain that my lady will be pleased by this once I finally speak with her. Nina. Day 35. I woke up with a yawn and a stretch as I recalled what happened last night. I had been sitting here, watching over Mom while practicing my spell when I must have gotten really sleepy since I couldn't recall passing out. Wiping the sleep from my eyes, I remembered that I had taken my cloak off while practicing. So, why? As I looked, I found that it was a blanket draped over me and my cloak still hung on the wall. Additionally, the book I had been reading was closed and set on Mom's bed in front of me. Speaking of Mom, her hair appeared to have rapidly grown much longer over the course of 2 nights. I couldn't really understand why, but I had a feeling that Grandma was somehow responsible. Yet, at the same time, her body hadn't moved an inch as she was still soundly in deep sleep. I still had no idea how much longer she'd be like this, and the wait was just killing us. Oddly, My nose was able to easily pick up the scent of beef behind me, followed by hearing Lucrute's voice, almost like it was right in my ears, from behind me. "Seems you've finally woken up. How are you doing today?" Turning to origin of Lucrute's voice, I found him approaching me with a bowl of stew in hand that he handed to me with a spoon resting inside. I smiled at the gesture and thanked the archer before taking the bowl and beginning to eat. "I'm doing all right. I only just woke up, so I can't really say much else aside from that." "When did you wake up?" I asked between mouthfuls of food. "Probably about an hour or so. Decided to take a quick stroll outside to get some air before coming back in to get food. Looks like there's going to be a large storm soon," Lucrute answered as he sat down in the chair next to me. "Good thing that we're inside then," I quipped between another bite of food. "By the way, when did I get a blanket put on me? I don't remember falling asleep, so I'm a little curious." Lucrute chuckled and patted my shoulder. "You were passed out reading your book when I came back to Kasha's room and found you. You looked a bit cold, so I put a blanket on you and moved your book." "Thanks." "No problem, Nina. Do you know if Peter and Dine are up as well?" I asked. I had mostly emptied my bowl at this point, so it seems that I was a lot hungrier than expected. "Our friends were eating breakfast when I saw them. Probably still are right now," Lucrute replied as he began studying Mom's comatose form before looking back to me. I gave him a nod and finished the rest of my breakfast before setting the bowl to the side of my chair. "Hey, Nina? Is it just me, or have your eyes mostly become gold at this point?" It definitely wasn't just Lucrute who thought this. I ended up catching my reflection the other day and quickly spotted that change. To be honest, while I wasn't exactly worried, I had no idea why my eyes were a mostly glowing gold at this point. Was it because of Mom fully becoming a goddess, or is it due to something else? "It's not just you. But I couldn't tell you why it's happening," I answered. This earned a snort from Lucrute, making my golden eyes give him a questioning glance. Another mystery to add to the growing pile. "Wonder when we'll uncover the answer to that one?" he explained good-naturedly. "Who knows? But we'll just have to live with these questions until then." With that, I pulled the blanket off of my shoulder and set it onto the back of my chair before standing up. "I'm going to stretch my legs for a bit before I come back. I'm feeling a bit stiff right now. Then I'll keep Kasha company in the meantime, Princess Nina," Lucrute said in assurance while teasing me at the end. I quickly started walking away to hide my blushing face and gave him a short wave. "Be back soon," I said before exiting the room and walking down the hallway until I reached the stairs and made my way up the steps to the main floor of the temple. Oddly, even without the foxfire lit torches, my eyes were able to easily see everything, almost like something filtered my vision and made everything brighter. Another change that could be added to the list of things I couldn't explain. I spotted a few kitsune in their fox forms who gave me nods or words of greeting. "Good morning, Princess Nina." Aoi, a brown and purple kitsune with 7 tails, said to me in his normal chipper tone. Though, it was hard to hide the flush of slight embarrassment at being called a princess. For the past 2 days, since Mom ascended, whenever I've spoken to any of the kitsune, they'd refer to me as princess. It made me feel strange and a little uncomfortable. From what I could figure out, because Taya and I are Mom's daughters, that automatically promoted us to the title of princess. This was only enhanced because Mom had ascended to become a full goddess, at least, that was how they explained it. When I tried to question them more on this, they all kept quiet with friendly smiles while saying, "You'll understand one day." And then there was the teasing the other guys gave me after they heard that. How did Mom ever get used to it? "Morning, Aoi," I replied as I walked for a bit while also examining a few of the changes that the temple had gone through since the kitsune first crafted it. For one thing, a circular skylight now hung over the golden pool in the center of the temple. Then, there were the stone benches arranged to face the fox statue of Mom. Each was made of stone that was somehow colored a reflective gold. In fact, walking throughout the temple to examine the walls, where they had once been mostly plain, but beautiful marble, Now they were decorated in gold filigree patterned with the shapes of foxes in a multitude of poses and actions. It felt like this was less of a temple to worship in and more of a work of art that had been crafted by masters. None of it felt gaudy in the slightest and seemed more natural than anything else, like the gold had been grown into the stone itself. Examining the artwork a little bit longer, I noted that my body no longer retained that stiffness that had been plaguing it earlier. With that taken care of, I turned around to walk towards the fox statue. As I was about to head back down to Mom's room and continue my practicing, the doors to the conjured temple abruptly opened and I turned around, wondering who it was that entered. The moment I did so, my heart felt like it was about to burst in my chest as I began hyperventilating. The memory of that night filled my mind as my right hand trembled upon recalling the image of acid melting it down. Strutting through the doorway, accompanied by a group of 3 others, while 9 more could be seen waiting beyond the doors, was a man that was almost the spitting image of Clementine. He had blonde hair that was styled similar to that monster's. Red eyes that looked around the temple before falling on me as if in judgment. He had a soft smile on his lips, yet it lacked any true emotion to it as it didn't reach those eyes of his. "Hello, young lady. Would you be willing to answer a few questions of mine?" he asked, yet no words were able to escape my lips. As he began walking towards me, I found myself stepping back, earning a look of cat-like curiosity from him. "Are you well, young lady? You look as if you've seen a ghost." Or, my heels slipped and I found myself falling to the ground with a panicked yelp. But that moment of falling was enough time for this man with the face of Clementine to now stand over me, looking down. "Do I look like someone familiar to you?" he asked with a hint of interest. "Greetings, visitors." The Paemu's deep voice interrupted as he arrived from out of nowhere dressed in a white robe layered over blue trousers and a red silken shirt. Additionally, his Vulpine features had now been hidden, making him appear like any other human. Slipping between myself and that man, Paemu maintained a diplomatic smile. "How might I assist the newest guests to this humble temple?" This took the man's attention off of me as he now gazed at Paemu with studious eyes. "Yes, I would appreciate your help. 2 days ago, a source of great mana created a pillar of golden light that could be seen for miles. We wish to uncover the origin and would be most appreciative of your cooperation," he answered. Paemu continued maintaining that smile, while at the same time, I noticed a few more disguised kitsune start appearing around the temple, looking like normal human clergy folk. Aside from the innate fear I had of the man due to his resemblance to Clementine, I also felt worried about his interest in Mom, even if it seemed like he might not know of her yet. Lucrute was in Mom's room, sitting with her after I went to walk. Peter and Dine were in one of the underground rooms nearby eating breakfast. About 10 of the 20 kitsune were visibly disguised as humans inside the temple, while the rest were unseen to me. This should be the safest place imaginable for Mom as she slept, yet why did I have an ominous feeling in my gut right now? Yes, we were witness to that miraculous pillar as well. Yet, we didn't see any sign of what the origin might be after investigating. "Sadly, I don't believe you'll find what you're looking for here," Paemu said with a sympathetic tone. If the man was accepting of the answer, I couldn't tell. Instead, he asked another question. "Mana origin aside, pray tell, could you inform me on what god it is that this temple worships? It doesn't appear to be any of the 6 great gods. This holy temple is dedicated to the glory that is the Fox Princess. If you'd like, I could tell you more about her since you seem like a man with an open mind." Paemu replied with a friendly and inviting tone. As they continued conversing, my eyes noticed the way the men accompanying this familiar stranger all seemed to become enraged at hearing about a new goddess. And then, I came to the terrifying realization of what the stranger had said. 6 gods. Not 4. The only people who referred to the gods as 6 were the slain theocracy. And these weren't just normal travelers, they were armed with weapons at their sides and armor or clothing that was of great quality. Who were these people? While I appreciate the offer, good priest, I must sadly decline. But before my compatriots and I take our leave, I have one final question. Slightly moving the side of Paemu so that he could get a good look at me, he asked, "Girl, does the name Clementine sounds familiar to you?" Gods, he truly was related to her. I couldn't find the words to confirm or deny the question, but that was all he needed. "So, you have seen my traitorous sister. Good. You will tell me everything you know," he said, stepping closer until Paemu put an arm in front of Clementine's brother to block him. "Son, the girl doesn't want to speak with you, and you'll find nothing of what you're searching for here. I would ask that you leave," the disguised kitsune suggested, his smile no longer on his face. "I've played this farce long enough, priest. I know you're lying. Step aside since my question was for the girl, not you," the man stated with a cold look to Paemu. "And I am offering you an out. I recommend you take it," Paemu warned. "Funny, so was I," the man flatly retorted before a spell array appeared next to him. Yet, before it could be fully cast, Paemu slammed his outstretched arm into the man's chest and ended the man's spell, launching him off his feet and through the air and into his companions. This continued to fling all four outside the temple's doors and towards the feet of the 9 men remaining outside. Immediately, weapons were drawn and spells began to be prepared. Unlike his fellows, the blonde man immediately jumped to his feet. The fact that he could stand up so quickly after taking the brunt of the attack, whereas the rest of his men couldn't, was terrifying to behold. How strong was he? "That's it. Summon, gigant basilisks," he shouted, rage evident on his face, as spell arrays lit up and 2 massive basilisks erupted from them. They were terrifying to look at as they were a death sentence to most but adamantite plate adventurers. Reptilian in form, with a snake-like body that had 8 legs, a massive toothy maw, crimson horns the color of blood, and green armored scales that able to block all but attacks that could penetrate mithril. I pushed myself to my feet as I tried to move past the immense fear I felt from the reminder of that night and Clementine. This man was after me, and he was especially after Mom. I had to help the rest of the kitsune protect her. "I'm giving you one last chance, boy," Paemu now shouted as he strode forwards to the doors, the other kitsune now taking defensive positions around the temple. "Take your people and walk away. This will be your last warning. I will, once you give me the girl so that I can question her and the magic item that you're hiding," he said in ultimatum. "Wrong answer. I'm going to pry your face off," Paemu stated, letting his illusion fall away to reveal his inhuman traits. This only further enraged the men, all obviously slain theocracy soldiers, at seeing a demi-human. Instantly, the gigant basilisks charged the temple while Paemu rushed out to meet them. With a slap of his tail, one basilisk was knocked aside, while he caught the other monster by the throat with his tail before slamming it face first into the ground. A few blasts of magic were shot at him by the mages, but he put his tails in front of the attacks to block them. After the first barrage, he pulled up the basilisk that was still implanted into the ground with his tail and threw it towards the group. Yet, instead of impacting, the basilisk was unsummoned, disappearing into mana, and Clementine's brother summoned a new one charging at Paemu just as the first basilisk got back onto its feet and joined the charge. But as the slain attackers focused their efforts on Paemu, they failed to notice 2 more kitsune appear behind their group until a few of their soldiers were dragged to their feet or stabbed with tails. I felt myself slightly relax as it seemed the group was easily being handled until a grouping of black bolts of mana was fired at the crowd, both kitsune, human, and basilisk alike. Rushing to the door with 2 other kitsune, I looked outside to see 4 beings, more like walking corpses than people, arrive from the west. One was a man in expensive-looking clothing that seemed a century out of fashion, with half of his old face being completely skeletal and the other half grey flesh. Another was a woman in red robes that covered her body, with long white hair. Her face, all grey flesh, showed traces of beauty, but that was countered by how it seemed her appearance had been pickled in a preservative than natural. And whatever technique used on her face had not been used with her eyes, as they were empty sockets with red dots. The third, a man with a human appearance that looked the oldest of all his companions, along with being the most preserved, shared that same grey flesh. He had long white hair and a long wispy beard with empty eye sockets filled with glowing red dots. He wore white robes under black armor that almost seemed like it could be made of adamantite. Finally, there was the youngest looking of the group. She had brunette hair that went to her shoulders and clammy-colored flesh. If given a little color, she could still pass for human, if one ignored that her entire lower jaw was only bone, all flesh having rotted away. She wore robes that seemed like those of the slain theocracy soldiers. Behind all four of these undead figures was an army of skeletons and zombies. Enough! The oldest of the quartet shouted. His voice, which was unnaturally audible over the fighting, was like falling sand to my ears, as if his vocal cords were turning to dust as he spoke. This somehow grabbed the attention of all combatants as they separated from one another, Paemu and the two other kitsune jumping towards the entrance of the temple, and the 5 slain theocracy soldiers, along with Clementine's brother, still alive, pulled themselves together. Then, they turned to the newcomers. This fight is finished. We have come for the source of mana that was detected here. Hand it to us or become one with our horde. It makes no difference. We will have what we came for. The undead ordered. Paemu glared at the quartet. As I have told the boy and his men, there is nothing of value for any of you here, lich. Gods, those were liches. They were here for Mom as well. You should have obeyed Nikto's order. Now, I get to have fun. The woman with the exposed jaw said excitedly, the flesh from her upper lip curling into a gruesome smile. With a wave of her hand, an army of skeletal and zombie animals rushed out from the ranks of the undead army and towards us. Almost like the world announcing the start of a battle, thunder cracked from the clouded sky and 12 kitsune now stood outside, with only 8 remaining inside the temple. Always in such rush, Claton knew. The lich missing half his face remarked as he waved his hand to cause the skeletal humanoids to follow the animals. And you're too slow, Baral Radas. Claton shot back. Enough squabbling in front of the mortals. The preserved woman intervened, earning a hump from Claton while Baral Radas remained silent. With almost a silent agreement, both the kitsune and slain put aside further fighting to deal with the undead that were swarming upon them. Clementine's brother sent his basilisks at the wave, doing a decent job at destroying them while half the kitsune went for the wave, and the other half went around for the liches. Hearing the rapid sounds of boots hitting the stone floor behind me, I turned around to see Peter, Dine, and Lucrute rushing over to me with weapons in hand. And it wasn't just their weapons, as Lucrute held my staff in his hand before tossing it over to me. Catching it in my hands, Peter was the first to ask, "We heard a lot of noise coming from up here and armed ourselves. What the hell is happening?" While asking this, he, along with the others, looked out the open doors to the battlefield full of kitsune, slain, and undead. Originally, a group from the slain theocracy, led by Clementine's brother, arrived because they wanted whatever it was that caused the pillar of golden mana. I began. "Wait, Clementine's brother? As in, that Clementine?" Lucrute asked in shock. "The very same." I confirmed with a grim nod, making the others feel understandably nervous. Paemu threw him and his men out of the temple before going to fight them. After a few other kitsune joined the fray, those liches arrived with an undead army, also after Mom, I said, pointing out to the 4 that seemed to be in various small skirmishes with kitsune upon them. "Looks like everyone is after something today." Dine jested as he took his mace from his side. "While dangerous, I'm willing to join the battle if the rest of you are." Looking at the staff in my hand, and then back to the battle where all of the kitsune were fighting to protect Mom, my fingers tightly curled on the staff as I made up my decision. "Let's help," I answered. With a grin, Peter drew his sword out and it quickly lit a flame as Lucrute unslung his bow. "Well, Pete, got a plan for us?" Lucrute asked. "Stay out of the main mess of the fighting and pick off any of the undead that we can. Additionally, stay away from the slain since we don't know when they'll likely turn on us." Peter answered quickly. "Sounds good enough," Dine said with a grin. As we stepped out of the temple, Lucrute added, Considering how many undead we ended up killing in the dungeon, this will be a pretty average day for us. I snorted at the observation. Weird how we consider this average, I said before conjuring a bolt of foxfire and sending it hurling at a skeletal dog, igniting it in blue flames. Peter and Dine charged another grouping of skeletons, with Peter slicing a pair of humanoid skeletons in half at their rib cages like a hot knife through butter. As Peter did this, Dine's mace swung and a heavy bundle of roots would rapidly grow out, crushing a trio of undead in a bundle of bones and rotting flesh. Lucrut took a more economical approach to the fighting by picking out groupings of undead not near any ally. Once located, Lucrut would fire his root arrows into them, creating an explosion of spiked roots that would pull the nearby undead into a tangled mess of bodies and roots. I tried keeping up by launching more foxfire blasts, igniting each of my targets. I could only hope that this battle could be handled quickly. Ramsel the Gold Plate. It had been 2 days since my team and I, the Delver Dragons, had made our way from Rantel to the direction of the golden pillar that was seen from the city some time ago. When our mage, Tomnus, said that the mana being produced by it was like nothing he had ever felt before, we all knew that there had to be a payday involved. Some magic item had to be there which we could get and either use or sell. That made us very excited at the prospect. If we could sell it to the right people, then our team could probably retire from adventuring and spend the rest of our lives experiencing the high life. But that was only if we could get it first. Looking around us, I spotted a few adventuring teams that had the same idea as the rest of us. There were the Mithril Plate teams called Kralgra and Sky Wolf, the Gold Plate team of Grasping Claw, and even the Silver Plate teams of Icedvan and Red Displacement. And that was just the teams of adventurers, not counting the few individuals that had also come along. We'd all been rushing to this place to be the first to claim the prize. While there was some competition, none of the adventurers here would dare to attempt to sabotage, injure, or even kill one another. We'd be outed from the guild for that with bounties placed on our heads. Instead, we simply had to move fast in this race. But discounting the adventurers who smelled money to be made or power to be acquired, we were not the only ones who had been interested in what might be found at the power's origin. Trailing behind us a short ways away were 2 groups. The first of these groups was the Rantel military, which was being sent to uncover what could possibly be a danger to the city, considering how close it was and the power that had been felt from it by all the magic users. While their hats were only in the game for investigation, they also helped act as another measure of temperance to prevent any hostile act between all the adventurers. Following aside from the guard was a whole group of worshippers of that new religion worshipping the fox princess goddess. We found that they were coming with since they said it was a sign from their goddess. I really didn't care much, only that they didn't interfere when our team tried to acquire that magic power. Funnily enough, there was one final group in this race, though they technically weren't even a competitor since it was just a pair of merchant wagons with a small team of adventurers guarding it. From what we learned of the merchants ahead of us, they were on their way to Pespel to trade some goods when the event happened. As such, they were willing to offer us some of their wares for trade, but they really wanted to get past the area without issue or hindrance. I was happy to say that I bought a new pauldron from the group to switch out with my old one that had developed a crack in it. Cost me only trading in my old pauldron and a discounted price of 3 silver. Pretty good deal to say the least, since this piece of armor was made of pretty good steel and would probably go for 10 silver at the very least. Hey, fellas, Tomna said to us, once past this small hill, we'll be extremely close to that source of mana. We should get ready to move fast very soon. The 5 of us smiled at hearing these words from the scholarly mage. Thanks for the heads up, Tom. Ready ourselves, boys, I said as my body tensed. Got it, boss. The others said in answer. A little bit further, and we'd hit the payday of our lives. That was when I suddenly noticed the merchant wagons suddenly stop up ahead before a shout was made following the whipping of their horses' reins. Both wagons began speeding off to the left, which made all of us adventuring teams rush over to where the wagons once were. As we did so, I heard the growing sounds of fighting before all of us finally saw what was going on upon making it over the hill. Absolute pandemonium. There seemed to be a massive fight going on between some foxes with many tails, humans with many tails, regular humans, and a whole host of undead in front of a temple. I could see the merchant wagons quickly trying to go around the entire battle with as much haste as could be mustered. But looking back to the undead host, all I could think is that it needed to be defeated, else we'd be next if the people over there fell. It could even move onto Rantle after that. Normally, we were motivated by money, but if that host of undead grew to a large enough size, then money would be the least of our issues. Reluctantly taking my bearded axe from my back, I looked to the others. Tom, are you sensing that the mana is coming from over there? I asked, pointing to the battle. With a displeased expression, he nodded. Shit, guess we'll have to do a bit of extra work for our payday. With a shared reluctance, my team also unsheathed their weapons. At the same time, I spotted the other adventurers nearby us doing the same. Let's go, I commanded. As I said this, thunder rumbled in the sky, followed by flashes of lightning before the rain began to fall. Then, we, along with every other adventurer with the same idea, charged to join the battle. Captain Martin Rollbeck. Our force had been making good headway towards the origin of that pillar of light. 2 days of marching, and our force of 100 would soon be there. Looking up to the sky, I saw the grey storm clouds gathering as multiple roars of thunder echoed down to us. I could only pray to the gods that the storm would pass quickly, since it was always a miserable experience to trudge through the rain. Captain Martin, what will the orders be upon reaching the source? The mages of the guild say that it's extremely close. My lieutenant, Harvold, asked. Looking to the younger officer, a man who had done well in rising through the ranks based on his own merit, I answered, considering that the adventurers up ahead, and the worshippers of that goddess next to us, are all heading to the same place, our best course of action is to try and prevent any mass chaos. Our primary job here is to uncover whatever this thing is and report back our findings to the city. But our secondary job should be to prevent any potential bloodshed among all parties involved. Of course, Captain. Though, do you really believe that things could come to conflict? No one knows for sure what this could actually be, even if those fox worshippers say otherwise. Harvold questioned with a refreshingly optimistic view. I looked the man in his green eyes and nodded. While I would love to believe that this will only be a simple mission and all parties will act civil, human nature has a tendency to prove otherwise. I can only advise that you should hope for the best, but expect the worst. That was when I heard commotion ahead and turned to look at the adventurers who were all drawing out their weapons as they focused on something up ahead. Shit, something is going on. Men. Draw arms, I shouted as Harvold and my second and third lieutenant, Atrian and Wallace, who were further in platoon, repeated my orders. The sounds of blades being unsheathed filled my ears as I did the same. On doing so, thunder roared and lightning flashed the sky before rain poured down. Up ahead, the adventurers all began their charge. Damn it, what is going on up ahead? I ran forwards in my plate and leather for a short way before cresting over the hill. Upon doing so, I found myself witnessing absolute chaos as the adventurers surged forwards to a battle up ahead between a mixture of humans, foxes with many tails, demi-humans with multiple tails, and an entire army of the undead. By the gods, this was horrifying. If that undead army were to grow large enough, then all of Rantle would be in danger. Behind me, I could hear my soldiers charging up the hill with me. Turning around, I pointed my sword upwards. Men. Form ranks, I shouted above the noise of the storm as my voice echoed to my soldiers. With my command, as my men crested the hill with me, they broke into division squads of 10. Division squads 1 through 5 with me towards the dead. Division squad 6 through 10 with Harold flanking the right. Harold gave me a nod as the army split in half. Squad 6 through 10, move on me, he commanded before immediately running with his squads northwest to go around the temple. Squads 1 through 5, charge the dead, I cried out and moved forwards, leading the charge. I will never sit behind my men as they charged to danger. As their captain, I led by example, and my men would follow me into hell because of it. Yet, as we all began sprinting, I heard a new roaring coming from the sky to the north. And I knew that this was not the sound of thunder. No, it was animalistic and alive. Edric the Serpent. My boys and I had been getting real excited as we got closer to this powerful magic item. We were all real excited at the gold we'd be raking in once we sold it. Especially so, because our contacts, along with the 8 Fingers base in the area, was wiped out. We found this out when we went there to fence some of our goods to them since they were fair with payments. Instead of the hidden base filled with illicit goods to be traded, we found nothing more than smoking rubble and bodies. That was a difficult thing to swallow, as it was hard enough to find a good fence that would pay out what is owed. Most would end up stiffing you since they knew that there was really nowhere else one could go to trade stolen wares. So, after that, we figured the area wasn't exactly good for men of our employment and were heading to the town of Woodantooz, where a few contacts lived, when we saw that golden pillar of light in the sky. Figuring that something of immense power was there, the boys and I decided to check it out and liberate it from any bastard that picked it up. Since we figured that an item like this wouldn't exactly have an owner, it would be a hell of a lot easier to sell it to the legal authorities for an immense sum. That's what got us all heading right back south to where that light appeared. I could just see the gold that my boys and I would be rolling in. That, and the women who would be more than interested in my personality that I acquired. I was just loving this shit. Got any idea on what you'll do with your share of the gold? Bruckus, a runaway criminal from the Baharuth Empire, asked. The man was almost 7 feet of pure muscle, perfect for intimidating others into giving us their valuables, buying a new pair of boots and enough ale to drown myself in. Stefan, a dwarf that had escaped an execution for killing a few neighbors for their riches, answered. As this occurred, thunder cracked in the sky and it finally began raining. Ale, Steph. Edward, a thin twig of a cleric, questioned. With the amount of gold we're going to get, you can get the best booze in the world. You'd waste it all on simple ale? Don't forget boots. All I need is clothes on my back, ale in hand, and foot in my belly. You humans just don't appreciate the simple things in life. Stefan retorted. He then chuckled and stroked his red beard. What a waste. Edward commented with a shake of his head. Deciding to throw my 2 coppers into the conversation, we've each got our own wants. Me? I want money and women, both of which I'll be getting real soon since we're probably about there, I said as we made it up a hill where we could all see a temple's roof cresting just above it in the distance. Even better, boys. Bunch of priests probably have it. Taking our prize from them will be easy. Holy shit, I exclaimed as we made it over the hill and saw a massive battle going on with people, beastkin, and undead. They were probably all after the same thing we were. My boys and I just stayed still for a short time, our eyes wide as we watched this ridiculous battle play out. Boss, in my professional opinion, I have to say, fuck that. Whatever thing this is, it's definitely not worth whatever the hell is going on up ahead, Stefan said dryly. I gave him a nod, especially because I saw what appeared to be the Rantle army arrive before splitting into 2 groups as another massive group of what seemed to be mages arrived and were now firing spells into the chaotic clash. And in my professional opinion, I am completely in agreement, Steph. Let's get the fuck out of here, I shouted to my band of 15. All of them also gave answers of agreement, and we immediately began to turn away when a roar from the sky just east of us filled our ears with its noise and our hearts with dread. That wasn't thunder, Edward said. Dragons, Ruckus exclaimed. No. 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 Turning left, I looked to the sky and saw a trio of white-scaled frost dragons flying towards us. I looked to everyone and shouted, "Run!" Which probably wasn't even necessary as we tried to get away. Yet, looking over and up, I saw the dragons open their maw and icy death raining down upon me and the boys. We couldn't run fast enough, and I first felt cold, then nothing anymore. Platinum Dragon Lord, After having readied my wild magic enough to feel confident, I flew my piloted armor to the location of that pillar, hoping that it was just an item that made such an event and not a player. Yet, growing closer, I spotted what appeared to be a temple with multiple groups converging onto a battle in front of it. Looking among the groups, there was the massive army of the undead that I could see were being led by 4 liches. Paying a bit more attention, I was able to recognize at least one of them, the bearded undead in black and white armor. His name is Nikto, and he's probably one of the oldest night liches around. He was alive when the players known as the 6 great gods roamed the world. Yet, I did not recognize any of the company that he kept with him. That such a being was here fighting against those of the Fox Princess's race bode ill. Nikto knew that there was power here, and he wanted it for his own. I couldn't allow such a thing to happen, and yet, it was not a good moment to enter into such a battle while the confusion among its combatants was already high enough. Aside from the undead, there was also the fox people that were fighting alongside humans against the undead threat. Quite a few were even attempting to take out the liches so as to end the threat quickly. And yet, it seemed a more difficult endeavor than expected. Whenever the fox people attempted to get close, they would be harried by death magic, intercepted by conjured undead, or the liches would simply teleport away. But while it was annoying for the fox people to catch the liches, it did not mean that they were in trouble. In fact, it wasn't wrong to claim that these liches were on the back foot as they had to continually evade the fox people from catching them. Another figure I was familiar with ended up catching my eye. Quaes of the Black Scripture was here as well. That was the most surprising, yet also concerning, thing to find on this battlefield. The slain theocracy was also interested in this place, enough to send one of their strongest warriors to retrieve whatever was here. I've kept my eye on the slain for years at this point as, aside from being the location where the players had spent the longest time cultivating, it was also the place where they had left a great amount of their legacies. From the items that were too powerful to be left in the hands of any faction, the secret spells that they were taught. And then there were the godkin. Those children and descendants of players that the slain hoarded and bred as weapons to be used against their enemies. While such an issue was an immense concern centuries ago, it had become less so with each passing generation. The blood of players grew diluted and weak as the godkin would breed with those without said blood, creating a weaker child. From what I've spied of the slain, they have been attempting a eugenics project to try and maintain the strength of each new generation. As it was, the only godkin in their theocracy with any merit was the half-elf, Antiline Haran Fush, better known as Zeshi Zetsume. She came to be when the only first-generation godkin I know to still live, Decim Hogan, the king of the elves, raped the girl's mother. Somehow, the mixture of godkin blood was great enough to give her such strength. As for Decim, even being a first-generation godkin, he was actually someone who I was the least concerned with. The man is arrogant, lazy, and a hedonist. He rarely, if ever, would venture outside his kingdom's territory. He had little ambition besides producing a powerful child. Any children he does have, typically are too weak in his eyes, are sent to fight his war against the slain theocracy in his stead to die. That, or he kills them. After so many centuries of keeping an eye on him, I've learned that Decim is the smallest concern among the many I already have. If he does become an issue, I feel confident enough that I could kill him if it came down to such a duel. Still, with the slain involved, I will have to ensure that they do not acquire whatever it is that they are after. To my west, I had a few spider-like creatures that seemed to near the battlefield. 2 arachnoids, 4 driders, and 8 giant spiders. They seemed to eye the chaos with interest before the driders turned invisible. I wouldn't bother worrying about them unless they became a problem since they seemed more curious than anything else. Towards the east of the battlefield, I found many humans charging to aid. The first to arrive were adventurers, then mages and soldiers followed, yet, looking over to see another group of soldiers flanking around the battlefield, I spotted 3 frost dragons, out of their adolescent stage and just recently adults, approach from the northeast before breathing their frost breath down upon a newly arrived group of humans, killing all of them. Once finished, They turned towards the flanking half of humans and began to rain frost down upon them. What in the hell is going on? The frost dragons typically kept to their territory, so why were 3 young adults here? I know that Olisir Dark Haliliel was currently embroiled in dominating the mountains, his sights not yet turned beyond it. The only thing I can guess is that these 3 are young hotheads trying to get stronger to prove their strength. Idiots. Continuing to focus on the battlefield, I watched it play out as living and dead alike fell to one another. Just as I decided what I was going to do, I spotted a massive amount of movement from the corner of my vision and looked northeast to a giant horde of winged monstrosities flying towards the battle. Leading this great flying host was a large creature that I could barely begin to describe the race of. It was partially skeletal, at least its head, some of its torso, and 3 of its many arms were. Its left shoulder held the arms of a skeletal humanoid, an insectoid arm that seemed familiar, and a fleshy arm of darkened skin. On its right, 2 skeletal arms with one much larger than the other, and what seemed to be a clawed arm of a golden dragon that was also familiar. But when I saw the wings and tails of the creature, I quickly recognized them. The golden paw, wings, and tail were from the evil deity known as the god dragon. Its insectoid wings and arm were from the demon god of insects. And then there was the 3rd set of wings. A platinum set of wings along with the tail that I instantly recognized had belonged to my father. And those were only the parts I could see from the dark robe it wore. This abomination had harvested parts from the evil deities, my father, and who knows what else. I felt immense fury and hatred as I looked upon the thing that had desecrated my father. He may have done wrong by this world, but he was my father and did not deserve to be looted for parts. This thing dies today. Once I find the right moment to attack, it will be erased from this world. But even with my anger, I had to keep a level head since this wretched amalgamation was accompanied by hundreds of chimeric abominations while it had unknown abilities, especially considering the body parts of the many powerful beings grafted to it. I watched as it flew above the main area of conflict, with its army hovering behind waiting for a command of action. This newcomer actually caused the fighting to slow down, and then cease between the living and dead as they all watched with caution. Then, the monstrosity spoke, its voice echoing over the thunder and rain. Earlier. Nina. As the rain continued pouring down on us in fat droplets, I didn't know if I should be thankful that I hadn't been wearing my cloak before this battle began or annoyed. On one hand, it'd likely be laden in water and slowing me down by now. On the other, my clothes were thoroughly soaked and I was cold. The one thing keeping the cold at bay was the physical activity that I was going through as I continued to fight. It was hard to see far past the rain and the frenzied fighting of the living and dead. Lucrute. Do you see Peter and Dine anywhere? I shouted as I shot a zombie wolf off of an adventurer with a bolt of foxfire. Lucrute grew a root arrow from his hand and quickly stabbed an approaching zombie in the head before kicking the zombie off of it and firing it into a crowd of skeleton. An explosion of roots followed before all the skeletons were sucked into a mass of roots and bones. No. We've pretty much lost them in the rush of new fighters and the rain picking up. I can barely see anything further than 15 yards, he shouted back before pulling out a normal arrow, drawing it, then turning to me. Nina, duck. I bent down as the twang of Lucrute's bowstring echoed in my ear, followed by a meaty thump as a zombie fell down next to me. Thanks, I said while standing back up and wiping the hair and water from my eyes. No problem. We gotta try and stick together and find the others, he shouted back to me. Yet, in the distance, I spotted a massive dark figure charging towards us. It almost looked like, is that a zombie bear? I asked as the undead beast roared while attempting to shake a blue-furred kitsune that was lodged on top of it, stabbing the bear repeatedly with its tails or tearing chunks out of it with its teeth. Yes. Move. He jumped to the right of the bear and I jumped to the left as the bear barreled on past us. I skidded across the muddy ground, coating my left side in it. Pushing myself to my feet, I was about to turn to Lucrute when a skeletal wolf charged at me. I swung my staff at the undead beast, the head of my staff impacting its skull, batting the creature aside as I finished it off with foxfire. Hearing the heavy slapping of feet against mud from behind me, I turned around to see a human skeleton charging at me with a rusted sword 3 yards away. Diving aside from its swipe while still facing it, I lit up the undead in blue flame as my back slid against the ground before I stood back up again. Yet now that I had a moment, I looked around and couldn't see Lucrute anywhere. "Lucrute," I shouted, but if he had heard me, then his shout back was lost in the sounds of battle, rain, and thunder. Shit. I cursed to myself as I stayed put and tried to keep my eyes open for any further undead. Then, my eyes widened and my jaw dropped as, in the sky, I could make out the flying form of some multi-limbed creature that seemed amalgamated from many others. And behind it, a horde of white creatures hovering with it. Enough fighting over my prize. The creature shouted, causing the fighting of the living and undead to slow and eventually cease as we all looked at the newcomer. "For the crime of fighting over what is mine, you will all join my legion." Alon, the ancient bearded lich, asked as he floated up from the ground to greet the newcomer, "What right do you have over that which is ownerless?" "It is my right as the future god of this world," Alon spat back with arrogance. What did he mean by future god of this world? Did he know that Mom, specifically, was sleeping under the temple? "You are an arrogant child believing himself king because he stitched some body parts to himself. You are centuries too young to try that with me, boy." Nikto returned. "And you are centuries too old to realize when you've been surpassed by the younger." Then, Alon held out an extremely long skeletal right arm at Nikto. "Begone. Lesser black hole." A dark array of magic appeared at Alon's outstretched index finger and Nikto seemed to realize something was wrong as he flew back just in time to save his life, yet not fast enough to save his right leg that seemed to stretch towards a black dot hovering in the air, like honey being poured, until it was finally ripped off and sucked away into nothing. "Minions. Expand my army." Once Alon said this, all of the creatures floating behind him sped down to meet the living and dead like meteors. Living and dead alike. "We must stop Alon before he kills us all." "Grand fireball." Nikto shouted as a massive ball of fire engulfed a group of 10 of the undead monstrosities. That seemed to be the signal for all-out pandemonium to erupt as everyone on the battlefield focused on the new threat that united us. One of the creatures slammed down in front of me and I was forced to run back and avoid the deadly attack. Countering, I shot a bolt of foxfire at the creature and found my heart sinking into the pit of my stomach as the only damage it suffered was the slight melting of its skull. This thing was stronger than me. The monstrosity attempted to slam its fists down on me, but I slid out of the way and shot off another blast of fire at the same area as the first blast, melting away more of its head. I was about to move again when it slapped its tail out at me. Unprepared for the attack, I did the only thing I could think of in the moment and put my staff in the way to block it. The impact hit, and I was launched off of my feet and into the air for what felt like a few seconds until my back painfully slammed into the ground as my staff flew out of my hands. For a few seconds more, I skidded along the muddy ground until it seemed like I was at the edge of the battlefield. Both my arms and shoulders felt like they'd been hit by warhammers, but I didn't think that they were broken. At the same time, the creature was still charging me and I was going to be its victim if I didn't move now. Painfully pushing myself to my feet, I was about to fire another spell at it before a pair of giant spiders jumped over me and tackled the monstrosity. What the F? I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my neck, followed by a warmth flowing from that pain. Rapidly turning my head, I found what seemed to be a woman with dark hair biting down onto my neck before pulling away with some of my blood trailing from her mouth. It was when I paid closer attention to see that she had 8 ruby eyes dotting her face and a grinning mouth filled with horrifically sharp fangs that I realized that she wasn't human. Then, the bottom of her jaw split apart into a grotesque grin. "We have you now," she said in amusement, all the while, the warmth in my neck was spreading. "What is happening?" Turning to the battlefield where I could spot a few kitsune tearing into the monstrosities, I cried out, "Helumph." She put a sticky clawed hand to my mouth, muffling my shouts, "Shh, shh. Let the venom do its work." the eight-eyed woman playfully said in my ear as I looked at my salvation off in the distance. I gave out more muffled screams and tried to pull away, but the inhuman woman held me in place with one arm and caressed my cheek with her free hand, making me realize that something was keeping my lips shut together. HMMMMPH. My muffled voice attempted to scream out to anyone that could hear me, yet my voice was drowned out by thunder, battle, and rain. No one noticed what was happening as the chimeric undead took all their attention to fight and survive against. And all the while, the inhuman woman continued to make shushing noises in my ear as if I was a wailing infant. That warmth kept spreading through my body and I eventually found myself unable to move anything except my eyes, while even if something wasn't already gagging me, I could only make the quietest groans at my loudest. Then, a thumping of multiple legs against the ground could be heard next to me. My eyes looked over to see a woman that looked like twin to the inhuman woman holding me. But then, looking lower from the black leather armor covering her torso, I saw only the black-plated abdomen and 8 legs of a spider. I wanted to scream as the woman gave me a split-jaw grin before reaching into a pocket on her armor and pulling out 2 things. One was a platinum ring with the design of a closed eye on it. The other was a spell scroll. For such cute prey, why don't I give you a proposal from my master? The spider woman teased before she gripped my left hand, pulled off my glove, and slipped the ring onto my ring finger. This will make certain that no one peeks in on our fun, but just to make sure you don't lose my master's gift. She closed my hand into a fist and spun her hand around it, leaving behind a trail of silk that ensured I wouldn't be able to open my fist to remove the ring. With a malicious grin, she spun her hand around my fist multiple more times until my fist was a ball of silk. She then activated the spell scroll and we were all covered in its effect, not that I could tell what the effect was. Once done, the spider woman holding me scooped me off of my feet and carried me in her arms like I was a bride being brought through a threshold. I just love your gold eyes, cute prey. If we didn't have to bring you to our master intact, I'd pluck them out and keep them as a pair of earrings. The spider woman carrying me purred out, increasing the fear in my racing heart as both women sped away from the battle with me in tow. Looking back to the battle, my eyes caught the flames coming off Peter's sword in the distance. And joining him, I could see a new army of kitsune appear on the battlefield, crashing into the monstrosities and slowly turning the tide of battle. Above them, frost dragons clawed and bit at the undead in aerial combat. I continued to try and scream out for help, but the venom did its job well, and the gag reinforced it. Tears streamed from my eyes, mixing with the rain splashing against my face, as we got further and further away from anyone that could save me. I hate leaving a job incomplete, but we had to move quickly so that none could spot us, cute prey. But don't worry, we'll make certain that you'll have a new set of silk clothes before presenting you to our master. The second spider woman promised while tauntingly wagging the glove she took off from me earlier. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw another spider woman join us, looking the same as the first 2. Sister, where is our last sister? Did you accomplish killing the false goddess? The spider woman carrying me asked. Oh, gods, did they try to kill Mom? No, our sister and the spiders accompanying us died in the attempt. I managed to escape due to more of those strange undead intercepting the foxes before they could get to me. The new spider woman answered, slightly alleviating my fears about Mom being killed. But then the woman looked at me with a split-jaw grin and I felt my fear grow. Our prey is even cuter than expected. I'm so excited to play with her. Can I be the one to clothe her? I renewed my attempted struggle to move, to slip out of the claws of these monsters, but my body wouldn't answer me. Don't be greedy, sister. We'll all get the chance to clothe our cute prey before presenting her before our master. The spider woman carrying me answered. Mom. Grandma. Please, save me. Divinely Mandated King of the Hill Part 2. Earlier. Peter. Ducking under the slash of a skeleton, I entered my third stance and smashed the pommel of my sword into its skull, knocking it off balance, and then slicing downwards from its shoulder bone to hip bone. This cut the undead in 2, and I quickly entered the second stance as a zombie equipped with a sword tried to take a swing. Deflecting the blade, I re-entered the third stance and sliced its head off before I quickly looked around to spot Dine swinging a zombie wolf, entangled in the roots of his mace, around himself like an improvised morning star, smashing a few approaching skeletons and crushing the zombie wolf still entangled. With an unseen command, the roots released the zombie wolf from their grasp, launching the creature into another zombie, knocking it down. Dime. Have you seen Lucrute or Nina around here? I asked over all the noise as we rushed over to one another, the wet mud squelching under our boots while the rain continued pouring down. No. They're still missing right now, he shouted back as we sliced or smashed a few approaching zombies back to their eternal rest. I don't believe for a second that they're dead, though. If that helps. Dine attempted to reassure me, and likely himself as well. Thought never approached my mind. But I would rather have us all together than anything else. I replied. Our team had been close together at the start of the battle, even if it had been chaotic. The only problem was when a whole mass of adventurers arrived, adding to the chaos, that we became separated. Since then, the pair of us had been attempting to find our friends while fighting through all the undead. Too bad that this was made difficult by how hard it was to see any decent distance through the heavy rain. I know what you mean, Dine agreed as we continued to fight off the constant horde of undead. Throughout the fight, I felt my body growing warmer, like power was filling me. I know that it was not from my body's constant physical activity since it stemmed specifically from my flaming blade. The blade was trying to help me, and I felt the presence of something ancient watching me with interest. This only served to make me tighten the grip on my blade before I entered the first stance towards a group of approaching zombies. Ready your blade. Concentrate your flames. Lash them upon your foes. Hearing the words of that ancient rumbling voice, I decided to heed them. I threw my will into my blade and commanded the flames to gather. I watched with a strange calmness as the red flames wildly cloaking my sword suddenly gathered together and cloaked the blade in straight blue flame which only slightly wavered when rain droplets fell upon it. Then, as if being guided through the motions by another, I maintained the first stance before slashing out at the undead a mere 5 meters away. I was absolutely surprised when blades of blue flame flew off of my sword and slashed through the zombies, melting completely through my opponents and turning them to charred pieces before sputtering out on the other side. The zombies' remains fell to the ground, and I felt slight awe and appreciation at what I just did. And looking down at the sword in my hands, I saw that it had returned to its regular red flames once again. What was that? Dine asked, completely astounded. Not fully certain myself. It was pretty instinctual. I answered. Well, instinctual or not, I hope you can keep it up since we've a long battle ahead of us, Dine said while smashing down a skeletal wolf. I laughed at his words and cut down an approaching skeleton with a single slash. You and me both, my friend. I called back before gathering more flames to my sword, turning it blue once again. Then, I slashed out more flaming strikes on the undead, killing scores of them. Just as we were getting into the swing of things, a movement above me caught my attention. Looking up, I found some horrific undead chimera flying above us on multiple sets of wings. And behind that undead, an army of flying chimeric monsters armored in white scales and bones. In a booming voice heard over the battlefield, the creature shouted, "Enough fighting over my prize." This caused the fighting between everyone to slow and stop as the attentions of the combatants became fixed on this new monster. For the crime of fighting over what is mine, you will all join my legion. While all the fighting had stopped, I tapped Tyne on the shoulder. We should try looking around for Nina and Lucrute while everything is calm, I said to the druid. Good idea. Let's move. He answered back. With that agreed, we swiftly began weaving our way together through the crowd while trying to spot our friends. Alon, the lich with a beard, asked as he floated up from the ground to meet with the monster, "What right do you have over that which is ownerless?" This only encouraged Tyne and I to hasten our search until I spotted the familiar slicked-back blonde hair of Lucrute, matted from the rain as it was. Over there, I said while pulling Dine towards the direction of the archer. He ended up spotting us as well since he swiftly ran over to us as the chimeric skeleton screamed back towards the bearded lich. It is my right as the future god of this world. Hearing him scream this made me a bit wary. Either this guy was a powerful mage, considering that he seemed to be a lich as well, with delusions of godhood which was worrying by itself. Or he had a method to become a god, and considering that Kasha was sleeping in that temple as a defenseless goddess, that made the idea seem much more plausible. Lucrute, it's good to see you again. Do you happen to know where Nina is? I asked as Dine, Lucrute, and I finally reunited. Lucrute shook his head. No, I was hoping that she'd have been with you. We got separated when we had to dodge a zombie bear that was charging us. Our archer answered, much to my disappointment. Before we could continue our conversation, the bearded lich, Nikto, I think, shouted back to the chimeric lich, Alon. You are an arrogant child believing himself king because he stitched some body parts to himself. You are centuries too young to try that with me, boy. And you are centuries too old to realize when you've been surpassed by the younger. Then, Alon held out an extremely long skeletal right arm at Nikto, begone. Lesser black hole. For a moment, I didn't see anything happening except for a small black dot appearing by Nikto. Then, Nikto flew back as his leg was stretched and elongated before finally ripping off and swallowed into that tiny black dot which disappeared. By the gods, that was almost instantaneous. I muttered. Hate to see what that would do to a living person, but I especially don't like where this undead freak is going with this. Lucrute commented, which I agreed with. Minions. Expand my army. Just as Alon said this, all of the monsters floating behind him sped down to crash into everyone on the battlefield. One creature, of which, was shooting down on our position. The three of us quickly got out of the way as it hurtled into the ground where we had once been standing. Living and dead alike. We must stop Alon before he kills us all. Grand fireball. Nikto shouted to all of us as a massive ball of fire blasted out of his hand and slammed into a group of the monsters. Wow, something managed to get both the living and the dead working together. Ever expect something like that to happen today? Lucrute questioned as he readied one of his root arrows at the monster in front of us. Entering my fourth stance, I gathered the flames on my blade until it turned blue. I expected to wake up and have breakfast today. I replied. Just keeps getting better and better, doesn't it? Dine said in morbid humor. Lucrute quickly shot his arrow at the creature while I unleashed a few burning slashes at the monster. As that occurred, Dine cast a spell, Twine Plant. Vines and roots erupted from the ground to hold the creature in place as the fiery slashes slightly seared its face before the two following slashes were blocked by its green arm. As for Lucrute's root arrow, it barely penetrated the creature's chest, but it did take the chance to break apart and quickly spread out across the creature's body, slightly entangling it. We sent off another salvo, on the monster, but I noticed that the flesh on the thing's arm had regenerated from the prior damage. What the hell is this thing made of? Before we could attack further, a bunch of kitsune began flooding the battlefield, with two of them tackling the creature in front of us and tearing it apart with their teeth or stabbing it with their tails. Thanks for the help. I called out to the pair. One of the kitsune, a fox with 7 tails and yellow fur, gave me a nod. Stay safe, you three, he said before diving back into tearing the undead monstrosity apart. Taking a moment to look around, it seemed like the undead monsters were getting teamed up on by multiple different groups working together. Oddly enough, I even spotted a pair of giant spiders that were valiantly attempting to tear into and web down the monstrosity that they were fighting. Past those creatures, I thought that I could see some figures in the distance, but they soon became blurred as water got into my eyes and I was forced to wipe them. When I looked again, I was unable to see these figures any longer, focusing on the fight at hand, as Dine, Lucrute, and I did our best to help out where we could. Above us, I found myself absolutely astounded when I spotted a trio of frost dragons fighting the undead monsters in aerial combat. There's God's damned dragons now? I exclaimed to no one in particular. Why the hell is everyone and their mother coming to this one battle? Lucrute asked as he sniped an arrow at a monstrosity that was being beset upon by a trio of kitsune throwing their blue fire upon it. I aided with more flaming slashes while Dine rooted the creature to the ground. Suddenly, I spotted a platinum streak in the air that crashed into Alon as he battled Nikto and the other liches. Platinum Dragon Lord. As the liches clashed with one another, I watched and waited for the right moment to strike. Nikto performed the main job of attacking Alon, while the three other liches aided him by harassing the chimeric lich with a myriad of different spells. Your feeble attempts to hurt me grow annoying, Alon announced as he threw up a shield to stop a set of fireballs from hitting him. Go pound sand, you pretentious prick. The lich with an entirely exposed jaw shouted back. Enough games, Alon said before disappearing and reappearing with the blink spell right behind the vulgar lich. Your unlife is wasted upon you. That energy would be better served in my hands. As Alon said this, his extremely long skeletal arm grasped the lich by the back of the neck while his insectoid arm stabbed its chitinous clawed fingers into her head. Soul drain. Negative energy drain. He cast both of those spells together as I could already see the effect on the vulgar lich as she attempted to dislodge her attacker that was sucking all of the energy animating her from her body. Before the other liches could react, I finally decided to use this moment to attack. While I'd likely have to fight the other liches later, I definitely didn't want Alon to empower himself now and lose a temporary ally to fight against him. With but a mental command, my armor's hand made a gesture and the platinum spear flashed forwards. Just before impact, Alon finally took notice of the attack and held the wings of the god dragon and demon god of insects in front of the spear as a shield. The spear didn't penetrate, but it did distract him long enough for a volley of magic arrows to impact him in the side, making his grip slip on the vulgar lich as she began falling to the ground until the other female lich, one with flesh fully covering her, flew over to catch her ally. Who dares interrupt my feeding? Alon demanded as he looked at me. Even without the ability to show facial expressions, I wouldn't doubt that he'd be glaring at me if able. Someone who doesn't care, abomination. I answered. With another gesture, the spear that had been deflected away now sped back for Alon in his blind spot. At the same time, I attempted to keep his focus fixed on me by sending my warhammer at him. Before he could put up a shield to block the warhammer, my spear tore through the back of his chest and out the front before flying to my side. But even though I hated this sin against nature, I found it slightly impressive that he could still throw up his shield to block the warhammer after being dealt such a blow. But observing the damage from the hole in his robe, I made note of how the bones of his ribcage were knitting themselves back together or fully regenerating any bones that had been lost. Troll, most likely. Another species grafted upon himself. What others might he be hiding on his body? Good play, stranger. I'll remember that for the future. Alon complimented as his longer skeletal arm pointed at me. Greater death blast. As the magic array formed, I was already moving my armor out of the way as a beam of black and purple energy shot out at where I'd just been. I see that a hero has come to join the fray. Interesting to see you still alive and here. Nikto commented as he flew next to me, maintaining his focus upon Alon as I did. With that pillar attracting the likes of you to it? Of course I would come to investigate. I retorted. In the air, I saw Alon ready another spell. While we will likely become enemies later with our interests on the same prize, it's best to work together against this arrogant child, that said, he jumped in front of me as Alon fired out another attack, magic barrier. Quickly, a blue shield of hexagons appeared before the pair of us and barely held off the attack until it ended. Then, the Night Lich dismissed the spell and watched Alon for his next move. Regretfully, I have to agree on the offer. Alon is dangerous enough as is, but with the parts of the evil deities grafted to himself, I have no doubt that he has more surprises in store for us, I replied while performing another gesture to ready my weapons to be launched. Oh, is that what's grafted to the child? I thought they looked familiar. Nikto mused aloud before the pair of us flew at the abomination. With a gesture, I sent all 4 of my weapons flying away in different direction before converging back upon Alon. At the same time, Nikto threw another fireball at the abomination while the other male lich still flying nearby, joined with a hail of magic arrows. Just before all the attacks could land, Alon cast Blink once again and dodged as the attacks crashed into empty air. Where is he? Looking around, I found the chimeric lich draining the energy from the lich with half a face. I flew towards the abomination and had my weapons launch at his position. Disturbingly, I watched as the energy animating the lich quickly drained away until the glowing red light in one of his eyes flickered for a moment before fully fading while the unlife in his other turned glassy. Baral, Nikto shouted in shock as Alon let go of the lich and we watched him drop to the earth where battles were still raging on. His body quickly became unceremoniously trampled upon along with the many others he joined. At the same time that Baral's unlife was ended, a 4th of the undead army fell, all consisting of humanoid skeletons, with their master no longer animating them. While this was a slight blow to the strength of the combined armies fighting against Alon's undead, the Fox people were doing well turning the tide of battle. Was Baral important to you? I asked while manipulating my weapons to chase down Alon as he flew around and either dodged or blocked my attacks. He was my student and my son when I still lived. Now, Alon shall join him. The ancient lich said with a hint of anger in his tone. Sorry for your loss, I said while pulling my weapons back to myself. You don't care. But the thought is appreciated, Nikto rebuked as he announced, bone shards. And launched a multitude of bony spikes at Alon, with one managing to clip the left wing of my father's that Alon had grafted to himself. You're right. I don't. But it's the polite thing to do. I countered before speeding to Alon like a missile with my weapons following. Earlier. Kasha. After I had fully calmed down after being told that I could see Dad again, Mom and I had been talking. Much of it had been Mom teaching me about certain aspects of my ascended divinity. Namely, a few specific things. There are quite a few conveniences about being a goddess now compared to when you were only half of one, my little fox, Mom said as I laid on my back while looking at the constantly shifting sky in fascination. She sat next to me and continually stroked my hair as the 2 of us just enjoyed the presence of one another. And what would that be, Mama? I asked as my eyes shifted to look over to her smiling face. Well, you technically no longer need to eat, drink, or rest anymore. The worship that you receive from your followers is all that is required to keep you alive. She answered, making my eyebrows raise up. Wait, what about if I still want to do those things? Am I going to be prevented from it because of my divinity? And what if I was unable to get enough worship for some reason? What would happen then? I asked. Mom giggled at the barrage of rapid-fire questions. You can still eat, drink, and sleep if you wanted to, it just isn't a requirement for you to live any longer. Though, if you were to suddenly lose all worship depending on what type of deity you were, there would be one of 2 things that would occur for any god or goddess put in that situation. But before I explain that, you must know that there are 3 types of deities that exist. When she said this, I found myself sitting up and looking at Mom in interest as she continued. There are those formed purely upon being conceptualized into existence by mortals, which makes them stronger on average, but also more liable to wax and wane with belief in themselves. If they were unable to receive any new worship, these deities would eventually fade away. They are also more tuned to their innate beings changing, since the way mortals believe in something can change over time. So, they pretty much live to the saying of the light that burns twice as bright burns half as long, right? I summarized. Mom rubbed my ears and gave me a nod, making me feel very good. Yes, that is a good way to summarize it. Then, there are the second types of deities, ones that were not complete gods, but eventually rose to divinity, such as yourself. You would be considered an ascended deity. These deities are not usually as strong as the conceptualized ones, but they are more stable and can survive without the worship of mortals. They are also free to choose their own paths and, sometimes, domains instead of being locked into them like conceptualized deities. Hearing Mom say this, I felt a little lucky to know that my life wasn't so restricted as it could have been compared to other deities. But then, that made me have to question, and what kind of goddess are you? I know that you weren't born mortal like I was. Would that make you a conceptualized goddess? Mom shook her head. No, I am the final kind of deity, also known as a pureborn deity. We simply came to be, without birth or belief, upon the branches of Yggdrasil as children of the tree. I was alive when the branches of the world tree were plentiful with so many beautiful realms. Then, the great calamity happened as Nidhogger, Mom said this name with pure disgust upon her face, fought Yggdrasil and destroyed so many of its branches. A sorrow took over Mom's face as she recalled old memories, and I found myself taking her hands in mine to support her. Mom's expression lit up from this, and she continued, "This realm we sit in was originally all that I could save of my original home. It took years and a great deal of my power for me to rebuild this place, and as such, I'm now inextricably linked to this realm. Its strength gives me strength, and I it. Were either the realm or I to fall, the other would soon follow. But that was worth it to protect all the kitsune and mortals that call the realm of foxes home." I couldn't help but smile at the kindness and generosity Mom had to fully tie her life to a place just so the people within it would be safe. "It seems like you and Dad were both just made for each other considering how selfless the pair of you are," I commented, before Mom gained a sheepish look in her eyes. She then cupped my cheek with a warm hand and shook her head. "I can't say that I'm utterly selfless. I'll fully admit, without hesitation, that I'm completely selfish when it comes to you. You are my daughter, my only living daughter, and I will protect you, want you, and love you more than anyone else." She then gave me a roll of her eyes and a grin of mirth. "Well, maybe your father would compete with me on that." Both of us began laughing after she said this, and she pulled me into a tight hug. "You are mine and Seth's daughter, and we'll both be completely selfish when it comes to you and your safety and happiness." As Mom said this, lulling warmth filled me, and I knew it to be true that there was no one else like my parents who were that selfish around me. But Mom then added, "Though it seems that with your mate and daughters, we've got a new pair of competitors to go against." Yeah, you'd be right about that. My girls and Lucrute would definitely start competing for that spot. But then I said in Mom's ear with a caring whisper, "But no one else will ever take the place of you and Dad as my parents." Pulling away, her silver and my gold eyes met with loving warmth. "Oh, speaking of your mate, while you and him have a good life in the bedroom, I could give you a few tips to help out." When Mom said this, I felt a mortified embarrassment as my eyelids slightly twitched. "Mom, have you been watching Lucrute and I?" I asked. "Read," demanded her to answer. Mom gave me a slightly guilty look. "Sorry, my little fox. Fertility is my domain, and it's extremely hard for me to ignore when my baby is performing actions related to it. Besides, considering that you are well on your way to establishing a domain of fertility in addition to the others you're already collecting, you should get used to talk like that." I felt my eyebrows scrunch at hearing this. "What do you mean by that?" "You're being worshipped as a goddess of magic, prosperity, healing, charity, freedom, protection, and now fertility. I'd likely say it's because of your natural appearance in combination with a divine stripper dress, as you put it. Mortals tend to put things like that together," Mom said before giving me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. She gave me an unconcerned grin and added, "But you shouldn't worry about it that much considering you're becoming just like a chip off the old block. Besides, I think that your first divine outfit looked absolutely precious. Freya and I have a few designs and ideas for your outfit that we'd just love to have you try out." "Mama," I complained, "I didn't even choose the design of it. My copy did, and she's always trying to embarrass me." "Yes, your copy may have made it, but she is based on your mind and personality. Therefore, you ended up making that outfit for yourself," Mom retorted, making me sigh at how overbearing my mother could be when she had her mind set on something. That was when I felt a pulse of power go through me, the sign of another maiden being created. "Mom?" I heard Tyre's voice shout to me, causing me to turn and see the ephemeral image of my daughter looking at me in confusion a few feet away from me. One big change I instantly took notice of was the large amount of gold taking up the blue in her eyes. Instantly shooting to my feet, I began running over to her. "Ter?" I shouted over to her, but just before I could reach her, she faded away from the top of the hill as my hand was outstretched to touch her. "Ter? Where are you?" I called, but heard nothing in reply. "Don't worry, Kasha, that's pretty normal here." Turning to look at Mom, I cocked my head in question. "What do you mean about that being normal?" I asked as I made my way over to her. "The process of your maidens being created typically sends them to my realm as they establish a connection. All this just means is that my older grandbaby has finally decided to forge that connection with you." Mom explained excitedly while I contemplated what that meant. I know that my worshippers definitely wouldn't force Tyr, considering that they knew about how pissed I was when it happened to Nina. So, that meant that Tyr decided to take the initiative on her own, which actually made me feel touched at the gesture. My older daughter wanted that connection with me, and it filled me with a warmth that brought tears to my eyes. "Tyr wanted to have closer ties with me," I stated with a happy smile. Walking back over to Mom, she shared that same happiness with me. "Your daughter wanted those ties because she loves you." "I'm very glad to hear that," Mom said, and I sat down next to her. "You don't know the half of it," I said with a sigh. "I just wish that I could keep my daughters with me forever." I mused while considering that, due to being a full goddess, I was going to outlive them if they weren't made immortal. "Oh, I wouldn't worry about that. Considering how you fully adopted your daughters as your children, and they have imbibed your blood in turn, it shouldn't take that long." Looking at Mom with confusion written on my face, I found myself quickly asking her, "What shouldn't take that long?" "You're a goddess now. Conceptualization is a main aspect of being one. You fully see your daughters as your own, and they see you as their mother in addition to having consumed your divine blood. That creates an intimate conceptual bond that none of your followers are unable to match. And because of that intimate bond, the belief of both parties makes it real." Mom explained, though it only earned a confused look from me. "And that means what, exactly?" I asked, earning a giggle from Mom as she gently took one of my tails and began stroking it in her lap, which I found divinely relaxing and pleasurable. "To tell you in the simplest way, my little fox, I'm excitedly giddy to see how my grandbabies will look once they finally develop their ears and first tails. Celicia Nina will likely be the first one to develop hers, and she'll finally get an adorable pair of brunette ears and tail." My jaw dropped as Mom explained this. "My girls would turn into kitsune?" "Wait. What do you mean by Celicia Nina?" "Oh, that's your little kit's full name. Celicia Nina Veyron. She was actually likely going to tell it to you soon enough, since the only other person besides myself that knew it was also Turinania." Mom explained with nonchalance. My daughter's full name. It was a very pretty name, though I wasn't fully certain as to why she had kept it secret unless it stemmed from the habit of keeping her true gender a secret for so many years. Either way, I was happy to know just a little bit more about my youngest daughter, but that was soon overwhelmed by my concern on her eventually changing to an entirely different race. "Mom, how long until either of them would change? And what would happen? Are they going to be okay? Will it hurt? What?" Mom put a finger to my lips to silence my deluge of questions. Following this, she gave me a reassuring smile. "Celicia Nina was originally likely to change in a few weeks after you ascended. Considering the amount of your blood that she and your mate got sprayed with during your tail's growth, that's probably been sped up to mere days at this rate. Aside from her ears and tail, Celicia Nina will gain all the usual traits of a kitsune, while her body will shift to more match that of her mother's." "Shift in what way?" I asked as my eyes slightly narrowed. "Attractive features are an inherent part of the kitsune race as I made them. And with you and I specifically?" Mom pointed down between both of our bodies. "Oh. But don't worry, your daughters are still growing girls, so it'll take a while before they are fully grown. Will it hurt them?" I questioned, thinking about how much pain I went through when growing my 10th tail. No, it should be relatively straightforward with them. At most, there will be minor discomfort as their ears change shape and move position on their heads while their tails grow. Compared to you, they aren't taking in the massive amount of power and worship that you did. I felt myself relax as I heard Mom's words, while also considering what I would need to do to help both Taya and Nina in the future. Both would be unused to hiding their bestial features. Additionally, Kitsune illusion would be too taxing for them to keep up for long periods of time like I could, especially Taya since she wasn't naturally a mage. I had a few illusionary rings in my sanctuary that I could bust out if needed for them. I'd need to set up lesson plans for Taya since, even if she didn't plan to have a career as a magic user, it would still be helpful in her day-to-day life to know a spell or two. That, and when did one ever hear of a kitsune that couldn't cast a spell? And then, I'd need to help them adjust to all the changes of shifting from human to kitsune. There were quite a lot of things that they would need to go over, just like I did when I first arrived in the new world. Wait, what changes did I ever have to deal with? Why did I just have that toe? Kasha, are you okay? You seem to be thinking yourself into circles. Mom asked good-naturedly, pulling me out of the tangent I was thinking. I'm all right, Mom, I was just thinking about something weird for a moment. Anyway, I'm really just thinking about how to help my daughters adjust to becoming an entirely different species. I mean, there's the hearing, a bit of the eyesight, and a sense of smell that we know is a hell of a lot stronger than a human's. Mom giggled at hearing this. You don't have to remind me about that. Remember when your father brought home what he thought was a simple box of discounted protein blocks? She asked. I couldn't help but laugh as the memory came to me, and when he opened the box, it smelled like burnt skunk. The apartment was impossible for the two of us to live in without wearing rebreathers for a week. Seth was so apologetic about it afterwards. Mom added, filling us both with another bout of laughter. Dad had ended up snagging a good deal on a box of protein blocks that had been rejected from the factory line due to an error in the machine that day. Somehow, a chemical mixture had leaked into the blocks as they were created by a worker having a heart attack on site and accidentally dumping some bottles of the chemicals he was carrying into the mixing vat. While the product that came out wasn't toxic, per se, all of them smelled like a skunk had sprayed its stink on the mixing vat before falling in and dying. Dad was able to get a whole box of the rejected product for under $20. Too bad he underestimated how bad it would smell to his kitsune wife and daughter. It caused the apartment to stink for a week because of it, at least to us it did. Dad didn't even notice the smell after the first day, and he'd made sure to make a few deals with the other apartment tenants on our floor to buy the protein blocks off him for a cheap price so that he could buy other food for us. Mom and I spent the first day just scrubbing our entire apartment with our rebreathers on to get rid of that smell. What? Oh well, it's just what happens when you live with people who can smell better than a bloodhound from the old Earth days. Don't worry, my little fox, I'm certain that you won't have the same incident that Seth did with your daughters. And I'm quite certain that Turininia, at least, won't have the same incident with her mate that we did with Seth. As Mom said this, my eyes widened and I looked at her incredulously. Taya's what? I quickly asked as the mixture of protective parent that wanted to vet anyone who had eyes for my daughter, and excited mom that wanted to hug Taya and ask her about details, both fought one another for dominance on how I should feel about this. A teasing grin filled Mom's face as she began to playfully poke me. I know something you don't know. Tilda, she sang out while continuing to poke me. Mom, come on. You can't just say something like that and then leave me in the dark. I complained but only received that little sing-song answer. This is just going to torture me now, Mom. Mom stopped for a moment and put a finger to her chin, as if in thought, before she finally answered, I think that you'll just have to find out. That makes it much more fun, wouldn't you agree? More like torture. I grumbled back. Cheer up, my little fox. You should be happy that your kit is finding a mate of her own. That means that she'll soon have little ones of her own running around for you to spoil as Grandma Kasha, and me as Great Granny Inori, Mom cheerfully explained while hugging me and nuzzling my cheek with hers. But, Mom, I'm already speed running being a parent. I don't want to now start speed running becoming a grandparent, I replied. One of your emerging domains is fertility. You should be excited about your kids having kids. As Mom said this, I just rolled my eyes. Of course, Mom wouldn't be bothered. She'd love any chance to spoil more of her family's children. And even if I was instinctually happy at the thought of my family growing, with the urge to have more myself, it felt slightly weird to have it all potentially happen before I was 30. Great, I think when I see Taya and Nina next, I'm going to need to have the talk with both of them. My God, that's likely one of the most dreaded things that all parents eventually go through. But one thing's for certain, Taya and I have a lot to talk about when I finally get back. Now. Mom. Grandma. Please, save me. I heard Nina's voice beg to me, filling me with immense anxiety. But it seemed to slightly cut in and out, like bad static on a radio. Looking over to Mom, I was able to tell that she heard my daughter's voice as well. Nina's in trouble, I exclaimed as I got up from the ground and wanted to get to her side immediately. Hold on, Kasha, Mom said as she closed her eyes for a moment, making me pace in place while wondering what could be happening to her. Why am I still stuck here? I need to leave now. Finally, Mom opened her eyes and looked at me. What is it? What's happening to Nina right now? I begged. I'm not certain. What I do know is that, while you slept, multiple factions have arrived at your shelter and are currently after you, even if they are not aware of your existence specifically. They all assume that the great amount of mana emitted from your ascension has come from a magic item that they can acquire. Currently, there a massive battle between a temporary alliance of the living and the dead occurring against a chimeric lich of different races and his chimeric army. The Kitsune cannot spot Celicia Nina in all the chaos, but they have managed to find your mate and friends. Mom answered with sympathetic concern. Nina is in danger, along with the others, and I'm still stuck here. Mom, how long until my body has finally finished this godly coma and I can leave? I need to get back. I asked while my heart continued pounding in my chest. My loved ones were battling against forces after me, and my daughter was in danger. And with all my immense power, I was still just here. Mom came up to me and put her hands on my shoulder, likely within the hour. Your body is not going to rush itself in the process of stabilizing all the energy going through it. I'm sorry to say, but all that can be done is wait, even if neither of us likes it. No. Don't take me away. Help. Nina's voice cut in and out again as I felt a growl in my throat before I turned from Mom and threw a greater fireball into the air in frustration while screaming. My instincts and mind were both roaring at the helplessness of it all. I had to get out, but I was trapped here and had to wait. I felt a soft hug from behind my Mom as she tried to comfort me in the intense anger, fear, and grief I felt. Kasha, you are going to get out of here soon enough. You are going to save everyone, especially Celicia Nina, but you need to keep your wits about you and not lose your mind. I know that it's hard, my little fox, but you will be of no help to anyone if you lose control. Fuck. I screamed out in pure frustration before taking the moment to focus on my breathing. I hated that Mom was right, but what else could I do but try to keep my mind as I waited for my body to finish recovering. Yet, I could still feel my chest thumping as my thoughts went to everyone that was still in danger. I've been told that a new host of Kitsune has joined the battle and are helping to beat back the chimeric undead. Unfortunately, there has still been no sign of Celicia Nina being discovered. In addition, the chimeric lich is a much harder opponent than expected. As Mom said this, I tried to focus on what we were already aware of. It would help to try and distract my mind from the anxiety. What is this chimeric lich? I asked. From what has been heard by Paemu, he is known as Alon. The lich has apparently grafted the body parts of other beings onto itself to increase his own power. He is being dueled by another lich known as Nikto, while the 3 liches that came with him try and support, but they are not making much headway against him. Mom answered. Shit, a chimeric lich? That was definitely a new one for me. The fact that there was lich-on-lich combat happening was also extremely strange. From what I've read up on, apparently liches were pretty rare to find, especially the ones known as night liches, and even rarer to see together. Apparently, the amount of mana I let out during my ascension was enough to pull 5 liches out of hiding. I didn't know if I should be impressed or scared about that. Wait, that took me out of my thoughts, and I turned to look over my shoulder at Mom. A warrior in platinum has just flown in to attack the chimeric lich. They are utilizing multiple weapons flying around himself to try and force Alon on the back foot. That was extremely familiar to me. Riku Agonia. What was he doing there? We waited few minutes for something to change when I felt a pull on my very being. Looking down, I saw that my body was growing translucent. Mom, am I finally going back? I asked, feeling a little impatient at the wait. I need to get back quickly, end whatever battle is going on, and then rush to save Nina. Yes, you're returning. Stop that fight and save your kit. I'll try to lend you whatever limited help I can from here. Mom replied, to which I gave her a nod of thanks. And one final word of advice, you may want to remember to change your outfit, unless you plan to be recognized by the masses instead of keeping your human persona separate. I will. I answered as my thoughts turned to that of Nina and the others. I'll be there soon. Platinum Dragon Lord. I found this chimeric lich to be an annoying opponent to face. Whenever Nikto, myself, or the other lich whose name I learned was Ashley, tried to attack him, he'd blink away from us. As for the other lich, Clatter knew, she was still recovering from the draining attacks that Alon had used upon her. It was all she could do to maintain her army at the moment, let alone trying to fight Alon on top of it. As for the fox people, they were engrossed in handling the chimeric arm, leaving Alon to our hands. The trio of frost dragons? One had ended up being slain by the chimeric undead, another had been injured enough that he was forced to land, and the third was trying her best to help protect the second. Aside from them, the only other fighters that could be called allies were all the humans in the area. The only problem was that they were all too weak to do anything alone. At most, they could hold off against the chimeric undead, and that was being optimistic. I was about ready to use my wild magic that I had been conserving when the entire interior of the nearby temple suddenly filled with golden light that spread out the doorway and windows. At the same time, an immensely powerful and concentrated source of mana filled the entire battlefield, and possibly even further. Anyone magically in tune with magic instantly had their attentions fixated on that temple. Even the liches and myself found our duel paused as we all wondered about just what might be happening. A few moments later, the golden light slowly died down, but much of the pressure of that mana was taking its time to do so. And while it did, I could feel the origin of that mana move through the temple until it reached the entrance and the fox princess strode out in that odd white garb of hers. Even more, I noticed 2 distinct differences with her from when last I saw her. The first was that her hair, where it had once gone down to her lower back, now it was down to her knees. The other, 10 golden furred tails snaked behind her instead of the 9 that I had last counted. But regardless of the changes that she had undergone, there was one thing that I could confirm without a doubt: she had been the origin of that golden pillar. And the amount of mana needed to produce that pillar was beyond anything that I've ever seen prior players emit. You, beast woman. The mana rolling off of you tells me that you have my god item. Give it to me, now, Alon demanded from the fox princess. All he earned was a glowing golden glare from the bestial woman. I rest for a few days, and when I awaken, I see the squabbling of children and death around me. And arrogant leeches believing that they can claim something that never belonged to them in the first place. I am beyond furious, she shouted over the entire battlefield. For those of you who came here with peaceful intentions, you may stay. For those of you who came here with greed in their hearts, but not the urge to kill, I give you this one chance to leave. For those of you who came here with greed in their hearts and the willingness to spill blood, your lives are mine. Immediately as she gave this ultimatum, I saw a shifting of the crowd below as multiple groups of adventurers took the chance to run, though some of them stayed. Aside from them, no one else bothered to move. Amusingly enough, Nikto hadn't bothered to move from where he floated. Either he wasn't afraid of this warning or he assumed that he'd never escape. But Alon, you will give me what I am after. Dead or alive, it does not matter which, he exclaimed as his longest skeletal arm aimed at her and prepared a spell. Lesser BL. Instantly, the spell array broke into motes of mana that faded away. Alon seemed shocked at the event, considering how stock-still he was. I decide if a spell can be cast here. Not you. The Fox Princess informed the Lich. None shall command me, girl. A moment later, the Fox Princess used Blink to appear behind Alon. That's the thing, you sad excuse for spare parts. Does one fall to the earth because they are commanded to? No, they don't. They fall because that's an inherent law of reality. And my desires are above that. This is no command, this is law. Alon immediately tried to swing around and smash the woman with his fists, but her tails easily caught the punches. I see it. My prize, Alon shouted as his free hands instantly reached for the Fox Princess's neck until her tails quickly ended that attempt. You will not stop me, mortal. Now, die. He screamed in rage as the chimeric Lich prepared another massive spell. No. The spell instantly fizzled away. At this point, I readied myself for when Alon would cast Blink again to escape, yet nothing occurred. This only caused Alon to struggle further as he attempted to break this hold he was in. Did you just attempt to cast a spell to run away? This is my law, no spell shall be cast near me that I do not wish, none may disobey. I am a goddess of magic among many other domains. You may cast your spells, but they will ask me if I allow it. No. I am to be a god. Not a bestial child. Alon tried swinging his tails to hurt the Fox Princess, but she simply caught the two limbs with another pair of her tails and held them in place. Life has suffered you for far longer than it has deserved. My next law, Alon, will cease. The moment she said this, the Fox Princess put her hand to Alon's chest before a spell of blue fire exploded from the goddess' hand with a massive crack that snapped the air and echoed far into the distance. As for Alon, his torso and head were ripped from his limbs before shooting into the air as a blue missile of flame, flesh, and bone until the flesh and bone quickly disintegrated to nothing. All that remained of the former Lich were the multiple tails and hands still firmly held in the Fox Princess's tails until more blue flames ignited them until they were rendered nothing but ashes falling in the rain. Upon the Lich's death, all the undead that he once commanded began to fall over, rendered inert without their master's will guiding them. Then, the goddess turned her attention to the three remaining Liches gathered together. Clatanu seemed to be held up in the air by Ashley instead of her own power, but I actually saw fear in that younger Lich's face as she quickly realized what her fate was soon to be. You three. The Fox Princess appeared in front of them with another casting of Blink, completely unafraid of whatever they might try at this close of a distance. You threatened the lives of my servants and all those I cherish. Like Alon, you have lived longer than any of the three of you deserve. But because you helped to fight against Alon, selfish though it may be, I'll give you all the chance to say your final words before I vaporize you. I have lived my life devoted to the arts of magic and necromancy. I do not regret any of my choices, for good or ill. In fact, knowing that I have become witness to, and am speaking with, a goddess that embodies the very concept of magic is what my life has led me to. I am now satisfied with this outcome, even if I will not see where it might further take me. Nikto replied with a smile on his grey flesh. Live without regrets in hell. She answered before the Night Lich burst in an immolation of blue fire that completely consumed him in moments before it ended, leaving only the adamantite armor he wore remaining as it dropped to the earth below along with his ashes. She then looked at the pair of Liches still remaining, and you too? Stop wasting my time, you divine bimbo. Just end this already before I turn to dust by the time you're finished, Clatanu spat back, while Ashley only nodded. Another moment, they burst into blue flames until they were naught but ash. As all three of these liches died, their undead army fell with them, leaving only the living remaining among a field of the dead. Quickly, the Fox Princess arrived to me, furious, but also impatient. "Why are you here, Riku?" she demanded. I saw the pillar and felt it. I believed that the amount of mana it released was that of a magic item of great power. I arrived to investigate, and if needed, take the item before locking it away in a vault so that none could abuse it. I answered truthfully, "Reasonable enough. I hope that we can talk later, but right now, I have to go somewhere." Saying this, she turned to all the humans that still remained and spoke over the rain as it picked up. "For those of you that came to visit, know that I will return within the day. But due to all of you having traveled so far, my kitsune will create shelters for you from this storm." When she finished, her body transformed in a burst of light until it became that of a massive fox, over 12 meters in height with golden fur covered in glowing white patterns that traced over her body. The Fox Princess's eyes were golden orbs visible through the battering rain while blue flames covered the tips of all 10 of her tails. I saw her take a sniff in the air before she shook her head with a growl, then her eyes focused on a direction south. With utter haste, she leapt over the crowd, into the empty area, and quickly sped off into the blinding downpour with multiple of her kitsune, as she called them, following after her until they disappeared into the increasing storm. I knew not where she was in a hurry to be, but I had no doubt that it had to be important, considering how she left so quickly. The enraptured master. Patiently, I waited on the outskirts of the battlefield farther ahead from within a copse with my companions. After my compatriots and I received our orders from our mistress, the Demon Queen, we rushed to ensure that she would receive everything she desired. Perhaps, if we completed our work well enough for her, she'd even grace use with the gift of seeing her face behind her beautiful armor. As such, us member of the slain theocracy waited for my minions to finally return with the prize in hand. I believed in their ability since the mistress personally gave me the divine artifacts to summon them. In fact, looking to my right, I saw one of my devoted servants arrive to me. She was what was known as an arachnoid. They were a humanoid-looking race to start with. But that was all the familiarity that my servant shared to humanity, as the rest of her appearance was monstrous. Her head was bulbous, with 8 crimson eyes of varying sizes dotting her face, a fanged vertical mouth that dripped in saliva and venom while further fangs circled her mouth and quivered in movement. Atop her head, multiple chelicerae twitched, ready to pull anything unlucky enough to be caught by them into her mouth. The rest of her body was not much better, as it was covered in dark chitinous plates, with long arms that split into multiple clawed tips, the same being said for her legs that ended in a single clawed end. Holding her aloft from the ground were 4 large spider-like legs that grew out from her back. For clothing, she wore simple dark leather armor that barely did much to hide her non-human features. In both of her clawed arms, she held a bundle of wet green clothing. "Greetings, my master." Her voice came out in a warbled echo. "The prize has been retrieved by your Dryder assassins. They will bring the girl here shortly after finishing their preparations with her. What do you wish for us to do with her clothing?" "Sorak, split the clothing among my men, who will take them into different directions to confuse any tracking." I ordered the arachnoid. "Other than that, were there any issues with the secondary mission?" Sorak shook her head in reply. "I apologize, master. One of the Dryders and 4 of your spiders died in the attempt to kill the woman. While sad that I couldn't give my mistress the good news about her hated enemy finally dying, my servants at least were able to acquire the girl. No need to apologize. That mission was unlikely to completed, but it was a mere side objective for the main goal," I replied, causing the chelicerae on her head to shiver in what I assumed to be pleasure. Then, Sorak moved off to start handing different pieces of clothing to my 12 men. Once finished, those men saluted me before taking off into the distance to the south. After completing her assignment, Sorak took her place beside me and lowered herself down onto her humanoid legs. She stood up to my ears in height when not on her spider legs. We waited a little longer until another arachnoid arrived, followed by 6 spiders and 3 driders, with one of the driders carrying a figure in her arms. The arachnoid, almost the spitting image of Sorak, aside from her eyes being green, gave me a slight bow while she was carried on her spider legs. She called herself Arena. The girl, as requested, Master. The arachnoid announced before moving aside to allow the driders to bring the girl forwards for inspection. The first thing I noticed about the target, Nina, were the white silk webs that covered the girl like a skin-tight suit which barely did anything to hide her modesty due to how uncomfortably tight it was. Her legs were held tightly together in what could be called a single stocking of silk, the same being said of her arms held behind her back in a similar long glove. What could be considered a scarf tightly covered the lower part of her face, leaving her eyes and hair visible. I could see those oddly glowing golden eyes of hers, with slightly slitted pupils, looking at me in complete terror as quiet muffled cries could be heard from her gagged mouth. We had such a fun time clothing her. We made it especially tight in all the best areas because our cute prey didn't complain about it. Charles, the drider carrying the girl, said, earning a few moans of complaint from Nina. She didn't even attempt to resist us, almost like she enjoyed it. Petra, the drider near the girl's legs, said before squeezing the girl's thigh, earning a muffled squeal and a twitch of her legs. Charles, the girl shouldn't be able to move, let alone twitch. Are you certain you put enough venom into her? Amal asked before moving the girl's head to the side to expose her neck. Obviously, I would, sister. The girl just seems to have a constitution that allows her to more quickly recover from the effects. Charles replied while Nina's eyes fearfully darted between the 2 driders. Well, just to make certain, I'll just give her a higher dose, Amal said before opening her mouth. Quickly, her lower jaw split apart and Amal bit into Nina's neck, earning a full-bodied twitch from her alongside a muffled cry of pain as tears fell from her eyes. Upon being satisfied by the result, Amal pulled away and wrapped webbing over the bite wound and moved the girl's head back to where it was before. Stroking the screaming girl's cheek, Amal said with a smile aimed at the girl, "There, now you won't have to worry about hurting yourself with struggling." The drider was correct as soon the girl's muffled screaming became whimpers and any further twitching of hers ceased. "Master, can I get to play with her?" Petra asked excitedly, like a child with a new toy. Considering how well they accomplished the mission for my mistress, I wasn't fully opposed to it. I am willing to allow it after we have gotten to a safe enough distance from here. But she must not be damaged before we present her to the mistress. I answered, filling the multiple eyes of Petra's with excited glee. "Don't worry, master. I wouldn't dare injure your prize. Besides, the cute prey will probably be squealing in joy by the time I'm done." The drider promised as I saw more tears pour from the girl's eyes as they squeezed shut. This encouraged Petra as the drider began poking and groping the girl enthusiastically. Nina likely considered this entire situation to be a nightmare that she was praying to wake up from. Instead, all she could do was watch everything while crying at her fate. I just smirked at this. I couldn't find any sympathy in my heart for the daughter of my mistress Nemesis. In fact, she deserved it for daring to think that anyone might be greater than the mistress of the slain theocracy. All of us soldiers of the slain theocracy knew that she the true ruler of our wonderful and holy country. It was why the theocracy followed her. This girl was simply earning one of her many punishments that she'd receive from the ruler of the slain theocracy, the Demon Queen. We just needed to get far enough away before using the magical scroll the mistress gave us to teleport to her lair, high up in the northwest area of the Great Forest of Tob. Then, the mistress would have her prize. And I, her special chosen, and the only one graced with a magical scroll to return to the lair, would be at her side once again. "Let us move, my servants." As I said this, a giant spider skittered from the trees next to me before lowering itself. Clambering onto my spider steed's back, my servants used their scrolls of odorless to conceal our scent. Then, the multitude of spider legs could be heard against the ground as we all traveled south before we would teleport. Looking over my shoulder, I noticed my driders giggling with one another as they played with the paralyzed girl's body while running. I would enjoy every torture the girl went through, especially because it was my mistress' wish. Turning away from my servants, I looked back ahead to keep my eyes on the distance. Behind us, we could hear a massive thunderous crack before everything went silent once more. Kasha. I could just feel Nina's presence, even if it faded in and out repeatedly. It seemed muffled in a way, making it difficult to determine her distance. But even muffled, I got the general idea of where she was, and I was going to save my kid. I could hear her calls and feel her fear right now, and it filled me with anxiety. Rushing on all fours in that direction, I eventually ended up in a copse as Nina's presence faded out again. Fuck. Sniffing in the air to hopefully get a trail before the presence came back, my nose became filled with her scent. And yet, it was going in multiple different directions. They were trying to evade me. Your Highness, have you picked up Princess Nina's trail? Paimon asked while entering the copse with 7 kitsune following after him. Just like me, all the kitsune shared my rage at the taking of my daughter. Nina's trail splits off into different directions. Each of you, take a direction and attempt to locate Nina. Capture anyone involved and bring them back for me to deal with later. I answered. I received nods from my servants before they sniffed the air and took to different directions that Nina's trail led. At the same time, I gnashed my teeth together while my tails whipped out and leveled the trees around me in an act of rage. My heart beat faster and I waited for that presence to come back. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, Nina's presence returned and I took off into the ever-increasing rain once again. My sight ahead was heavily obscured by that same heavy rain, but it didn't matter. I could feel that she was south. My paws pounded against the ground as I kept trying to increase my speed, more and more. I needed to get to her quickly. Running through some trees, my paws caught on something and I ended up tripping over my paws while also knocking down a set of trees. Looking down, I found a sticky line of silk webbing that had been set up like a tripline. Fuckers are trying to impede me. I instinctually found myself roaring in frustration and fury before burning the silk off with the fire on one of my tails. Then, I charged forwards as Nina's presence blinked out once more, but this time, I kept on running in that direction. I'll cut some distance, if I feel her in a different direction, then I run that way. Please, Mom. Save me. I heard Nina's sobbing prayer through that annoying static and it made me run faster. Exhaustion didn't matter, my lungs burning was an afterthought, any hindrance was ignored. Then, I tripped over another line, but this time, I rolled back onto my feet while pulling the boulders the line had been attached to behind me. My tail simply burned the line off me while I continued running while the boulders rolled a bit more from the momentum. As her presence came back, I slightly altered my direction a little bit to the left and sped up. I felt myself growing closer to my kid. I was getting close, Nina. Just hold on a little bit more. Speeding up, I thought I caught a whiff of something when a creature jumped onto my face and began ineffectually biting and spraying webbing at any spot it could. It was a giant spider, a fucking pest. One of my tails instantly grabbed the spider from my face and quickly crushed the thing's thorax before I viciously dragged the creature's face along the ground behind me as I ran until I felt the creature was nothing more than paste. Then, I let it go without a second thought as another one of my tails burned any webbing still on my face off of it. I saw up ahead that I was close as there were some distant figures that I thought I could make out, yet I couldn't smell it. Then, Nina blinked out again. That didn't matter, I've got you. Just before I got any closer, webbing came out from the rain at either side of me, tripping me once more, and pissing me off all the further. With a roar, my tails grasped the webbing and quickly yanked, pulling the creators of the webs towards me, a pair of arachnoids that quickly broke off the lines, launched lines away from me, and pulled themselves away. One of the arachnoids was too slow, as I caught her with my tail and wrapped her into a prison of my tail to question for later in case I didn't leave any other survivors. But I could deal with the other arachnoid later, they were just trying to delay me. Looking around, I tried to reorient myself to where I saw the figures before. Then, the other arachnoid came back and threw more web lines at me, annoyingly hindering my progress. Without another thought, I cast Foxfire Annihilation, and threw the spell immediately behind me, not bothering to look at the pest's death. I charged forwards and saw a man on a spider, 3 driders, and in the arms of one of them was Nina, encased in webs that bound and gagged her, with her golden eyes looking at me in hope. Mom. Then, 4 giant spiders took the chance to try and jump me, with 2 actually landing on my face while I smacked the other 2 away. They were doing everything possible to hinder and stall my progress as they sprayed webbing at my eyes to blind me. I was used to their tricks at this point, as 2 of my tails snapped in the way and burnt the creature blocked the webbing, while 7 others started smashing on the arachnids until they had been crushed into paste. Get the fuck out of my way. 9-inch nails, I cried out as I cast Blink to arrive right where they were, then they disappeared, and I found myself crashing into the ground where Nina had been. My eyes looked at the spot she had once been carried at, and I pawed the ground where she had been. I had been 1 second off. They could fucking teleport and I had been 1 second off. But I could just innately feel that they didn't have mana due to my senses now. None of them but Nina did. How did? A spell scroll. They used a spell scroll. I roared out in rage, frustration, and sorrow. Then, I looked over to the little fucking pest still wrapped in my tail. Slamming her into the ground hard enough to maim, but not kill, I immediately read her mind and ripped out everything from her head that could point me to my daughter. I ignored her screams of pain as I sorted through all the relevant information, finding nothing that pointed me to where Nina had been taken. Then, I crushed her head like a grape with my paw. The slain theocracy took her. They took her. They took her. They took her. They took her. I will burn their country to ash after I get my daughter back. I'll burn it to ashes getting her back in the first place. They took my child, and for what? To get at me? I promise, they will suffer. Giving out a massive roar that could be heard over the thunder and rain, I immediately started contacting each of my kitsune with message to see how far that they have gotten in their hunts. But I was only given disappointing news that they hadn't gotten whoever was spreading her scent just yet. The heavy rain was helping to muffle it. All the while, I could hear Nina's static crying in my mind, making me angrier as I planned to only give my kitsune less than 15 minutes to bring me one of the accomplices so that I could rip information from their mind on where my Nina was taken before I immediately broke out my shooting star ring. I would probably get impatient and use it sooner. I didn't care which. My Nina is coming back home today. I would tear apart all of Yggdrasil if I had to make it happen. And then, I will burn the slain theocracy to the ground.